Good evening and welcome to all of our viewers on KIMA Action News' YouTube channel and to the 8th of our 2024 election candidate debates. I'm John Kennedy O'Connor and I will be the moderator for all our 9 debates that we have scheduled. And tonight the candidates for State Senator, Legislative District 14 have been invited to answer your questions on the topics that matter to you ahead of you casting your ballot this election. Now, we will welcome your live comments while we're on the air. To comment, you just need to click the subscribe button and you will see yours and other comments on the right of your screen as they appear. However, we will not be putting any of your comments to the candidates during the live debate. Now, we're really pleased to welcome to the studio Democrat candidate Maria Beltran. Unfortunately, Ms. Beltran's opponent, Curtis King, the incumbent senator and Republican candidate for this district, has declined the opportunity to take part in this debate. Senator King's publicist sent us this statement. I appreciate your enthusiasm for engaging in a debate, but at this time, my client, Curtis King, is focused on other priorities and is unable to participate. Now, we've allowed 1 hour for each debate with 2 candidates. Tonight, we will have a 30-minute broadcast as there's just one. The rules of this debate, though, will be the same as any other where both candidates decide to participate. I will ask a question that the candidate has not seen before, and the candidates will each have 2 minutes to answer, followed by 1 further minute for each for rebuttals. But since Senator Curtis King has declined to participate, Maria Beltran will be given up to 3 minutes to answer each question uninterrupted. Now, Ms. Beltran has already recorded a personal statement, which you will find on our YouTube channel. Maria, thank you very much indeed for being with us tonight. And I'd like to start with the first question. And the first question comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. Is the 14th district a safe place to live and work? And if elected, how will you make improvements to the public safety of its residents? And Ms. Beltran, you have up to 3 minutes to answer.
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you, John, and everyone at KIMA for this invitation. Public safety is a top concern of mine, and I want to set the record straight. I don't support defunding the police. I never have. I've been pretty clear about my stance on public safety. First and foremost, I want to make sure that our police officers have the resources they need to do their job. We got to make sure that we are also recruiting local police officers from our communities to continue building that trust. And third, I know there's a lot going on. I know there's a fentanyl crisis. I know we need more resources for folks. And I want to work with everyone to make sure that our police officers have the ability to do their jobs across the 14th district. So I'm looking forward to hearing more questions from you.
Well, thanks so much, Maria. And let's move on to our next question. And our second question tonight also comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. We have seen an explosion in the use of illegal drugs across Yakima County. What will you do to counter this epidemic, particularly in regard to the use of fentanyl? You've already touched on this, Maria, but again, you have 3 minutes for your answer.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, I've gone at every corner of the district where I've talked to voters about what they like to see, and fentanyl crisis is impacting our district heavily. So what I like to do is make sure that we are providing wraparound services for folks who are experiencing fentanyl crisis. That means working with our local police officers, regional and local jurisdictions, and with our healthcare and behavioral health facilities. We got to make sure that we are approaching this issue from a holistic perspective. And I know at the state legislative level, we've done some investments in making sure that we are providing local and regional municipalities the ability to deal with the fentanyl crisis. I think it's really important that folks have the resources they need. And if that means more state funding for our communities, then I'm willing to go to Olympia and make sure that we bring state resources into our community to address fentanyl crisis. And we also have to work with our local police officers to make sure that, the folks who are, selling drugs and selling them to our community members, that we have a strategy on how we're going to tackle that as well. And I look forward to working with everyone to make sure we have a holistic and a well-balanced approach to the fentanyl crisis.
Well, thank you, Maria. And I do want to remind viewers that Senator Curtis King, the incumbent Republican candidate in this race, was invited multiple times to be with us, but he has declined to participate. Moving on now to our third question tonight, which again comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. People who support Initiative Measure 2117 say that if it passes, gasoline prices will go down. Is this true? And what steps will you take to cut gasoline prices at the pump? And again, Ms. Beltran, you have up to 3 minutes for your answer.
Yeah. This initiative in the 2117, the Climate Commitment Act, is an initiative that helps our state fund critical programs like public education, mental health, behavioral health, and public safety. I think first and foremost, we got to make sure that we keep this initiative that is helping provide critical funding. I'm going to work tirelessly to make sure that people's lives are more affordable. Time after time, the number one issue that is coming up on doors is affordability. And I know those issues firsthand. My parents were struggling to work, we're struggling to keep food on the table. And I think in Olympia, I'm going to fight really hard to make sure that our lives don't get more expensive.
Well, the second part of that question was, if it passes, will gasoline prices go down? Because some people are saying that it will, others are saying that it won't.
Yeah. I think what we've seen over the last year and a half is gasoline prices have come down.
Okay. Well, thank you, Maria. Let's move on now to our fourth question tonight. And this question also comes from an Action News viewer in Yakima County. Staying with driver issues, actually. One of the biggest complaints in Yakima is road maintenance. What are you going to do while in office that will assure voters of smoother and safer roads? And Ms. Beltran, you have up to 3 minutes again for your answer.
Yeah. So infrastructure, I've heard about it from voters across the district. And what I like to do in the state legislature is make sure that we're bringing back infrastructure dollars to make sure that we are keeping our roads up to maintenance, and that we are investing in our local infrastructure. Some of the things that I keep hearing time and time is that people haven't seen those investments that they need in their neighborhoods. Some folks just want basic things. They want to make sure that their potholes are paved over, that there's street lamps at night, that there's speed bumps. And I'm gonna go to Olympia to make sure that we bring back more infrastructure funding. There's a bridge that connects Mapton and Sunnyside, and over the last 10 years, we've been making some investments there. But up to this day, that bridge isn't open yet. So we got to make sure that we are proactively investing in projects that need funding, and that we're not waiting till the last minute to fund a project when it's unsafe for folks to use. So my approach in everything that I'll do in Olympia is for us to be proactive, and that we are taking proper measures and are being thoughtful about how we're spending people's taxpayer dollars, especially as we're looking at an economy locally that folks are struggling to find jobs and able to keep up with the cost of living. So I want to be really, really thoughtful of how we're spending your taxpayer dollars.
Well, thank you so much, Maria. I do want to remind everyone watching that you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that will give you access to the live chat to the right of your screen. We hope you'll join in the discussion. Is Ms. Beltran answering your questions? Let us know. But let's move on now to our fifth question tonight. And this question comes from an Action News viewer in our own neighbourhood of Terrace Heights. How do you plan to make the cost of raising and caring for a child and a family more affordable? And Ms. Beltran, you have up to 3 minutes.
Yeah, I really love this question, because when I was a kid, my parents couldn't afford childcare. So during the summers and weekends, they would take me out picking with them. And I'm really grateful for that experience, because I learned the value of hard work and to give back. And here we are, almost 31 years later. I think there's been some interesting policy ideas floated around in Olympia about childcare and potentially capping what an individual or a family could pay. I think some conversations have been about capping 7% based on what you make on a yearly income. So I think, one, we need to make sure that childcare is affordable for everyone, especially in our district where we have really small rural communities where folks have to drive 30 up to an hour to go to their jobs and then have to come back and look for childcare. So one, we got to make sure we are investing in our childcare providers who are keeping our kids healthy and safe, and that we're making it more affordable for individual families and individuals who need childcare in order for them to work. I think there was a study earlier this year that mentioned that I think a high percentage of people who were leaving their job, they were leaving their job because they couldn't find access to affordable and reliable childcare. So I think I look forward to working with folks to making sure we get it right, and that folks who need it have access to it, and that we're always thinking about our kids and making sure that they also have childcare after school programs and during the summers as well.
Now, of course, the question is also about raising a family as well. So, of course, education costs are important as well. Do you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I think right now what we're seeing, everything is so expensive, and people are struggling because there's not a lot of good paying jobs locally. There's some, but not enough. So I think we need to find this balance between protecting our current jobs and bringing good paying jobs to this region, so folks who aren't able to afford childcare have a bigger check and are able to seek affordable childcare.
Well, thank you, Maria. And I do want to remind viewers, once again, just joining us, that Senator Curtis King, the Republican candidate in this race, was invited multiple times to be part of this debate, but he has declined to participate. Moving on now to our sixth question, which comes from an Action News viewer in Yakima County. What is your plan to make sure that rural areas of Yakima County and the whole district have the necessary healthcare resources available? And Ms. Beltran, you have up to 3 minutes to answer.
Yeah, I have gone corner to corner across this district, from Yakima to Pasco to Lyle, and folks really want to make sure that there's actual healthcare clinics in their neighborhoods and in their communities. And in Olympia, we got to make sure that we're bringing back some of the state resources to invest in our healthcare facilities. Here in Yakima, we used to have 2 hospitals. We're down 1. Toppenish, we had to close a maternity care a few years ago. And right now, we just don't have enough specialty care providers locally. So folks have to travel across the state, whether they go to the west side, whether they go to Tri-Cities, or they go to Spokane, to seek specialty care providers. So one thing I really want to do is make sure that we are investing in our workforce development. That means training, recruiting folks to come to the Yakima Valley, to come to the 14th district, and to work in our local hospitals and our local clinics, and bring that specialty care providers that we need. Another thing that we could explore, and something that we've done a good job in Olympia, is bringing down the cost of prescription drugs. Right now, there's a cap of insulin, which I think has benefited a lot of folks, but we gotta think bigger and broader of where we can cut some of those costs, especially for our middle and low income folks who just are struggling right now. We can't forget about our veterans and seniors, folks who are living on disability and Social Security. We got to make sure that they have access to the local healthcare they need, and that it's affordable and reliable.
Well, thank you, Maria. And let's move on now to question number 7. And this question comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. The demand for some crops that farmers have been growing for generations is going down, and there is also a supply surplus on many of Yakima County's crops, including hops and grapes. Will you help these farmers stay afloat, or do you think that it's up to the farmers to find other ways to make a profit? And Ms. Beltran, once again, you have up to 3 minutes for your answer.
Yes, this is a fantastic question. Agriculture is one of our strongest sectors in Central Washington. And we gotta make sure that our small and medium farmers are able to remain farming. Once farmland is gone, it's gone forever. So I want to make sure that I'm working with our farmers, our growers, to make sure that we're protecting our local agriculture industry locally. I also want to work with our farmers and farm workers to make sure that we're working together, and that we continue to have a strong agriculture industry locally. I think something that I'm really excited about, I used to work at Northwest Harvest when I was a student at Gonzaga, and something that we did was local farmers came and they gave their produce that they weren't selling or were needing to hand off to somebody. They would bring it to the local farmers market and local food pantry facility, and folks would come here and shop. So I think what I like to see more is that, when we do have, for example, Meals on Wheels or another food pantry facility, is for us to build some partnership with our agriculture industry to make sure that we're purchasing their crops and their fruit and vegetables, and that we're paying them a fair share market and making sure that our local folks are eating local and they're eating, the vegetables and fruit and veggies that we're growing here. How cool would it be if you can go down to Safeway and buy someone asparagus that, that was grown in Wapato? So I like to see something like that to make sure we're supporting our local farmers and growers and that we're supporting our agricultural workers as well.
Well, thank you, Maria. And I do want to remind viewers just joining us that Senator Curtis King, the incumbent Republican candidate in this race, was invited multiple times to be part of this debate. However, he's declined to participate. We're moving on now to our 8th question, which comes from an Action News viewer in Yakima. The drought situation in the Yakima Valley Basin deteriorates every year. What steps will you take to ensure funding for water projects to protect Yakima's agricultural industry and to ensure remote communities have enough water to survive? And again, Ms. Beltran, you have up to 3 minutes.
Yeah, as they say, water is life. And I think here in Central Washington, we've taken some great steps. There's a project called the Yakima Basin Integrated Project that does invest and thinks about the short-term and long-term water implications. It's a great project. It's actually well known across the state and across the country. Growers came together. The Yakima Nation came together, water conservation districts came together, and they developed a plan, a short-term and a long-term plan around water and how we can maintain our water streams, not only to have enough water for agriculture, but also enough water for our fish to have enough water to stream down and for our conservation districts. So I like to support projects like these. I think this is a fantastic project, a project that was really thought out. It was stakeholdered by so many different groups, and it's really well known. And I look forward to being part of programs like these and coming together with folks to solve some of our pressing issues. And YBID, which is how it's known locally, it's a great example of the kind of collaborative approach that I would take as a state senator.
Thank you, Maria. And moving on now to our 8th question, which comes from an Action News viewer in Yakima. Now, this is in their own words. In my opinion, no company has ever paid the corporate tax. Sure, they have written a check to the IRS, but where does that money come from? It comes from the customer that buys their product or service, making it a hidden tax on us, not the company. Do you agree with that? And what reform would you call for in corporation taxes? And Ms. Beltran, once again, you have up to 3 minutes for your answer.
Yeah. So a couple thoughts here. So I do agree that major corporations are not paying their fair share of taxes, and so we gotta make sure that we're holding them accountable. Because right now we're seeing price gouging at the grocery stores, and people are really feeling it. So we gotta make sure we're putting some mechanisms so price gouging isn't happening, not in our community, not anywhere. 2. I will not support an increase in people's taxes. I don't support an income tax. I think we have one of the most regressive taxes in the country. So in Olympia, I want to make sure that I'm being really thoughtful about how we're spending our taxpayer dollars and that we're not making people's lives more expensive. And I think looking at our tax reform, looking at other ways where we can balance this out to help our middle and low income class is going to be important for me.
Well, thank you very much, Maria. And actually, that was question 9. I do apologize. I made a mistake there. So our final question in this election candidate debate comes from an Action News viewer here in Yakima. What specific changes can residents of District 14 expect to see in their day-to-day lives if you win this election? Ms. Beltran, you have up to 3 minutes for your final answer.
Of course. So, voters across the district will have an opportunity to elect a fresh new voice to Olympia, a person who's going to show up and listen, who's going to show up and bring your voice with you and is going to work really hard. I think this debate shows exactly, how I hope to be in Olympia. We have this very unique opportunity to elect a new leader, and I hope to work really hard. I hope to show up, and I hope that I hope to get to work. And it's really disappointing that my opponent wasn't able to be here. I know we haven't really seen each other throughout the last campaign cycle, but I think folks in this district deserve someone who's going to show up and who's not going to be out of touch with the district. Things that I like to see specifically, time after time, I've heard people feeling the economic pinch. Right now, we have one of the highest unemployment rates in the state. Warehouses are closing. People are losing their jobs. Warehouse workers are struggling to find other jobs. We have a young district. Time after time, I've talked to folks on the doors, young folks who just can't find a job and are thinking of moving. So I really want to focus on workforce development, apprenticeship opportunities, and creating an economy that works for people. Two, we got to make sure that we are addressing our housing situation. Right now, there's not enough housing available for renters or home buyers, which is really driving up the cost of housing. And three, we got to make sure we are investing in infrastructure. Roads and bridges are important, but what's also important is investing in our water infrastructure. Time after time, between the cities of Union Gap and Sunnyside, I've heard that people are paying really, really high prices for their water usage. And I want to make sure that we are alleviating some of that financial burden by doing something around our water infrastructure. So in the state Senate, I will be a strong voice for everyone, regardless of where you live, regardless of your political affiliation. I'm ready to work really hard and to show up and get to work.
Well, thank you, Maria. And that's all of our time for the 8th of our 9 2024 election candidate debates. I want to thank Maria Beltran very sincerely for being with us tonight and for taking our viewers' questions. And I want to thank you for watching and for all of your questions and comments. Once again, we are very sorry that the Republican candidate, incumbent Senator Curtis King, decided not to take our invitation to debate with his opponent, but we hope you have found this discussion helpful in making up your mind for the upcoming election in this race. Our next debate is Monday, October 28th at 7 p.m, when the candidates for United States Congressional District 4 will be invited to join us here in the KIMA Action News studio. We will once again be live on our YouTube channel at 7 p.m. We hope you'll join us on Monday. Good night, and thank you again for watching.